Welcome to Pixel Therapeutics, where we take two subjects we adore, gaming and psychology, and what we do is show how the two work hand in hand in many instances. Today we want to start a series looking at toxicity in online gaming. Tell me if this experience is very similar to one that you've had. I never did play many online games growing up. It was not till I got much older and got good internet that I started playing it. My first real experience was League of Legends. A friend of mine encouraged me to try the game out, so I did, and I played with he and a group of others for a period of time and found that I really liked playing as Caitlyn. But in order to get better at the game, I realized that I would need to play a number of games by myself. That was the beginning of the end of my relationship with League of Legends. The very first game I got into, I didn't do as well as I would like to, and I received a lot of textual treatment. Individuals calling me out for being bad at the game, which really and truly seems mild at the end of the day. It was the individuals who told me what I could do with myself that bothered me the most. And as such, I made the decision that I didn't want to play League of Legends anymore. Every time I see an ad for League of Legends on YouTube, I laugh, press the skip ad button, and tell myself never again. My second experience was with Valorant, and the story is very similar. I started out by playing with a group of friends, found a character or two that I really liked, Killjoy, and I played the beta, and we played a lot of games, and I realized that I needed to get better at the game because I was the weak link, and as such, I started playing solo games. That turned out to be a mistake because instead of receiving text messages, I received the same treatment through my headphones as I began getting yelled at, called names, and again told what I could do with myself, even told that I needed to end my life. And again, I made the decision I don't want to play this game anymore, and I've played neither game since. Now, I have thought about getting back into Valorant, but probably not right now. I've grown thicker skinned since then. I play Dead by Daylight and a few other games that are online. I do so for fun, and if someone gets mad, I don't care. It's just a game. If someone wants to take a game too seriously, that's fine with me. But you may have experienced something very similar to the two examples I just gave. Not only that, you may have experienced it far more often than I have, and it may be for you a reoccurring thing. So we want to talk about toxicity in online gaming, looking at one of the reasons it might be prevalent, looking at reasons why people get toxic in games. But I want to start out by looking at two things in this episode. First of all, we want to define toxicity, because if you and I have a baseline knowledge of what toxicity is, then we can better understand what we're talking about as we go through this episode. Not only that, but we want to look at how toxicity has affected people in the past. So let's start out by defining toxicity. I like to define major terms for one major reason. If you and I are discussing a topic, toxicity, and you hear me saying toxicity over and over and over, what happens if your definition of toxicity is different than mine? You may have a much stronger view of toxicity than I do, or you may have a more lenient view of toxicity than I do. So as we discuss this, we have two different thoughts. But not only that, as I describe how it affects people, you may be wondering, how are people affected by this? So it helps for us to have a baseline definition. And as we go about defining this term, I want you to realize you may differ in definition than I do. You may think that I'm wrong, and that's fine. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be the one that defines it, and I want you to hopefully at least understand where I'm coming from as I'm discussing this topic. So starting out, let's talk about what toxicity is not. There have been times that I've heard players discuss a player on the opposing team or a player on their own team doing something that is toxic. And I've heard the description of what they've done, and it didn't go against the rules of the game. It wasn't cheating. No one was being harassed. What it all came down to is what they did annoyed me. That is not toxicity. That is not toxic. We choose how we respond to things of that nature. I give an example. When I played Dead by Daylight, I used to think survivors who clicked their flashlights a lot at killers were being toxic. And I thought about it more so when I played killer. I later realized that the only reason I was getting upset at this wasn't because it was something that was toxic, but because it was something that annoyed me. And it was something that threw me off of my game, and I learned over time to ignore it. Toxicity, though, is something far worse. If an individual downloads a program that allows them to crack a video game and to cheat or hold the game hostage, I would consider that toxic. If a player makes abusive statements towards teammates or even opponents, that is toxic. If a player targets a specific group of people based on maybe their sexual identity or their race, religion, that is toxic. An example of this is a discussion that was had a few months back concerning the Claudette face skin on Dead by Daylight. It's a skin that if you kill 25 of the survivors, of the original 4 survivors, that would be Dwight, Jake, Meg, and Claudette, then Leatherface unlocked a facial skin of that character. He would wear their skin as a mask. Now, in and out of itself, the skin fit with the lore of Leatherface. He's a crazed cannibal who would wear the faces of his victims as a mask. The problem for a lot of people wasn't there. The problem with the skin lay in how players used it. Some chose to target black streamers while wearing this skin, claiming it to be blackface, and making racially insensitive remarks in the beginning and in-game chat, or maybe even going into the stream of this person into the chat and doing the same thing. Hate raids are things which occur on Twitch against minorities on a far too common basis. That, my friends, is toxicity at its core. Toxicity, in my definition, is any action that is meant to hurt someone mentally, emotionally, or physically. Another word we would actually use here is abuse. And so as we talk about toxicity over the next few episodes, that is what we're discussing. Now, why is this toxicity harmful? Well, in 2020, the Anti-Defamation League performed a study concerning the targets of toxicity. A staggering 68% of those asked experienced online harassment of some kind. 53% of those were targeted based on either race, ethnicity, religion, many were Jewish or Muslim, gender, a lot of them were females, or sexual orientation, members of the LGBTQ+ community. Now, the effects of this, in my opinion, very staggering. 16% of gamers who experienced some form of harassment indicated they became less social. 14% felt isolated. And just over 1 in 10 players took steps to reduce risks to their physical safety. Perhaps most concerning of all is that roughly the same amount had depressive or suicidal thoughts. 13% of these gamers contacted game companies, and 9% indicated they called the police to ask for help or to report harassment. Other effects are that some simply chose to no longer play the game anymore, or they quit gaming completely. And so we see that this affects more than just the person. This also has effects within the gaming industry as well, because that's less money that these companies would be making. Now, the question that we want to delve into now, having looked at the definition and looking at why it's dangerous, ask the question why. Why is toxicity so prevalent in online gaming? But we're going to answer that in the next episode of Pixel Therapy. Until then, I hope you all have a great day, a great week. God bless, and love each other.